TVOT.
Well, I am very pleased to announce the next session. This actually was suggested by Channing back in New York, correct? And we tried to do it in New York, and we did something in New York, but it didn't quite approximate what I think we're going to do here. So I want to thank Channing for always coming up with great ideas and being such a forward thinker. So obviously this session is called Broadcast Synchronized Companion Apps, Lessons from the Field. And so we hope to technologically show you actually what's happening on an iPad. Channing, Dawson from Scripps Networks, take it away.
Thank you. Thank you, Trace.
Thank you.
Not for me. So we've been thinking how to put rubber to the road, and we said no better way than to see what the broadcast marketplace is doing with synchronized content apps. And so today we've gathered four of the early pioneers in it to tell us not necessarily the technology. We want to focus this on the creative process, on what it takes to get these apps into reality. Think about this: there's an X/Y axis, but there's also a Z axis, and that Z axis is also the time that it takes to move things through a linear show and synchronize in against that linear show. And so part of this is the choreography and the sort of the production of these apps. It's not just that you're putting content up at the right time, and it has to be the right kind of content to stimulate the right kind of reaction from viewers. So rather than I describe it, I'll let these guys introduce themselves, and then we're going to launch with John Hashimoto from the Weather Channel, who's got the first iPad app that we'll see sync. So John, why don't you do your first introduction, then Scott, and then we'll come back to you.
Yeah, be glad to. Thanks, Channing. My name is John Hashimoto. I've been at the Weather Channel for almost 4 years now. And when I arrived there, those 4 years ago, we were doing primarily just one app on the Dish Network. We've gone through a variety of experiences and experiments over the years, but we were using the very robust Dish platform to do an interactive bound app. And if we can switch to my PowerPoint, I'll show you real quickly a couple other things. Or should we go through the introductions first, Channing?
Do the introductions, then we'll come back to you.
Scott?
Check. My name's Scott Maddox, and I'm leading a joint venture between Nielsen and Digimart called MediaSync, and you'll see a demo of that shortly. But my background is really interactive space. It was a long time ago. I was working back at Verizon, which was then 9X, doing interactive TV, early days, and have worked as a consumer products and interaction designer at Apple. I led the interaction discipline at IDEO for a couple of years, and I sort of followed along the various platforms. So for me, this is really about creating new consumer products and services, but on emerging technologies. So whether it's CD-ROM, mobile, television, that's been the focus of my career.
Lisa?
Hi, good afternoon. My name is Lisa Murphy. I'm product marketing manager at Matayo. Probably most of you have not heard about Matayo. We are actually a company that specializes in augmented reality technology. And our vision, our goal is to tie digital contents to the physical world. So I'm honored to be here. Not too much experience on the TV side, but we've done a couple projects with German TV networks where we're syncing live content to the screen so you can actually participate in the interactive experience. So I'll share that a little bit, and hopefully you guys will like it.
Hi, I'm Dewey Reed. Spent the first half of my career in film and television, so this is really what I really love. This iPad has come along now, so now we can actually get back to making television again. Because I went onto the internet for quite a few years and created a lot of multi-mediocrity, and now we're finally back to creating really good content again.
So before I hand it back to John, I wanted to put this idea in your head. If you remember when we were in high school years back, we read a book called Brave New World, and in that book, Aldous Huxley, that book was written in 1932, 80 years ago, he proposed this concept of the feelies. If anybody remember the feelies? You'd go into the theater, put your hands on the tubes, and you'd feel on your lips the kiss that was on screen. Well, he sort of anticipated that breaking through that x-axis, or that z-axis, to say, wow, what if you could have, in fact, experienced what's going on a screen? Well, this is a certain step towards that. It's an interesting kind of tactile step towards actually closing that distance between television and the human experience. So at that, I'll turn it over to John.
And if that were true, of course, we would change the temperature in your living room with our Android app, but I don't think we're there yet. We're going to keep working on that. As I mentioned, the Weather Channel's been in the business of ITV for some time, although I guess you can't call it a business if it doesn't make any revenue. We have a very large footprint. If we can go to the PowerPoint, I'll show you a couple of screens of our utility weather app, which is currently on. We have an app on DirecTV. We have one on Dish, as I mentioned, and we're building to the Verizon widget platform as well. So, and our focus has been, as you can imagine, delivering hyper-localization to people, kind of zip code level, weather forecasts, current temperatures, the ability to save favorites, things like that, very much like our mobile app. And our goal has been to kind of deliver on these goals as well, leveraging our multi-platform content, primarily our data, and increasingly some of our rich media as well, facilitating cross-platform personalization, which is, we're not there yet, but the idea of actually porting your favorites from your iPhone app to your television set is something that we can actually talk about with some seriousness now. And ultimately, of course, creating more inventory for advertising, addressable advertising, enhanced advertising. So what we decided to do as part of our strategy, particularly given the popularity of the Weather Channel mobile app and the iPad app, was to go to a second screen experience this year. And we talked to a variety of vendors in that space and ended up striking up a great relationship with Scott at Nielsen Media. And we have a brand new show coming out this spring called From the Edge with Peter Lik. It's kind of a adventure weather photographer show. The only thing that's not in that hybrid mix of a genre is a pawn store, a motorcycle, and a couple of, a dating scheme. But in any case, Peter Lik is a pretty well-known photographer. He has 13 galleries around the world. He's a landscape nature photographer, an Australian, pretty colorful guy. You could call his photography kind of adventure photography, but it's really beautiful. It's very, very striking. And this show's about kind of the journeys that he goes on fundamentally across America's national parks to get what he calls that keeper shot, to get it in the can, as he says. So we thought it would be a great show to use the MediaSync experience for, and also to use all of our platforms to promote downloads. And it turned out to be pretty successful. Let me try to show you a demo. I have here an iPad 2, and also I'm going to try to run a video at the same time, so watch as I juggle all of this at the same time, I guess.
That's right. I think this is the first 4 iPad app or iPad demonstration done in this building. Not from the edge.
So you're watching the show at 9 p.m. on the Weather Channel on Thursday night. In fact, this is tonight's show that we have built in the encoded triggers. We'll talk a little bit more about the technology. I want to show you the experience first. And I'm going to go ahead and essentially sync this app with the show. And you'll see what we call the content modules, or the synced features, start to reveal themselves on the iPad. And what we do as producers is work with the producers of the show to figure out what gaps we can fill, for example, informationally in the show, contextually in the show, that the iPad can deliver, whether it's did you know factoids, whether it's close-up information about some of the characters that Peter meets while he's out there in the field. There's an interactive map to give you some sense of how many different locations he's going to, in this case in California, rather Hawaii in this episode. And also to give fundamentally larger versions of his imagery. He will show you some of the snapshots that he shoots and selects in these locations. Of course, those shots go by in about 3.5 seconds. So a user wants to actually see a close-up of a Peter Lik photograph can use the iPad app to kind of touch and get closer and look at it in at their own pace, a larger version of the image. There's a lot of ways to.
It needs to sync still. It hasn't synced. So the app is actually trying to listen for the audio watermark that identifies the show,
That's right.
and it's doing it in real time, and it's actually doing it off of a stored video, and there it has.
Plunging cliffs and picture postcard beaches, all packed across just 25 miles. But I haven't come here for
It listens
beaches
well.
or rainforests.
You guys might want to turn up the audio a little bit more. See if that works.
Waterfalls.
There we go.
The tough part is getting to them. They are hidden deep in the jungle, on top of remote mountain ranges, and along inaccessible coastline. First, the race
We'll let
is
you
on
see
to
one
get
more
my shot
module
when we
here
touch
so we
down
can.
at Mammoth Jurassic Falls. Next, we'll face brutal rainstorms and treacherous cliffs to capture mountaintop falls on the stunning Nepali coast. Finally, I scramble the rocks for a shot at Queen's Bar, where freshwater falls cascade into the Pacific Ocean. It rains 350 days a year in Kauai, creating waterfalls of every size and type across the island. And there are so many, they are impossible to count.
I think that's enough.
Must be about 1 million waterfalls on the island, isn't
But-
it, mate?
Thank you.
Real time.
So as you can see, it syncs to the show in real time. I think I can say with, frankly, a lot of pleasure that the experience of actually producing one of these is relatively easy. In fact, I finished building this show this morning here in San Francisco. So thanks to Scott and his technology team, we're able to use a web-based content management system to upload the images, to paste in the text, and to actually do some syncing, timings, and sweetening and fine-tuning, all from a laptop in San Francisco, a very bad laptop, I guess I should mention as well. Channing, I think that's it.
So, how many people were involved on your team to develop this?
Me, a designer, and one other person.
We love that efficiency.
Yep.
That's amazing.
Now, on Scott's side, there was a development firm which helped. Basically, Scott will go into more detail. They have a variety of templates for this application. We delivered the graphic assets. They built, with the template, the app itself. And then they gave us control of the content management system to create those modules for each of the 13 episodes.
Great. And they're templated so that it's a pretty straightforward deal, right?
Very straightforward.
Yeah, amazing. So on one side, you've got a whole production or a development team on one side, but basically the production team is 2 or 3 people.
That's right. And I was talking to someone earlier today about this. A little bit of heavy hand-holding at the beginning for people like me to kind of figure it all out. But literally, Scott's team calls once a week just to check in and see how things are going, as opposed to every week some mad scramble of calls and bail us out, we're having problems. It's been very industrial strength. Congratulations, Scott. And very dumb-proof in my case. If I'm able to do it, I tell people anyone can do it.
That's great. By the way, any questions at any time, feel free to ask, especially as we go through this. There are iterations of the same concept throughout, so feel free to raise a hand and just ask questions, okay? Then we'll move on to Scott Maddox from Nielsen Media Sync. Thank you, John, who sort of built the framework on which John's presentation goes, and I'll jump in, John, or Scott.
Great, thanks. So John, it's a real pleasure to kind of follow a happy client in this presentation. And I will talk a little bit more about, just briefly, the core technology behind the scenes and then the toolkit that we've created. So what you saw happening there, the way the application synced with the program was through using Nielsen audio watermarks. So embedded in every TV show in the past 7 years, you have been exposed to Nielsen embedded watermarks. These are codes in the audio track, and this is one of the foundation technologies we use to gather the raw data to create Nielsen ratings. The Nielsen ratings, in turn, are the currency by which the industry does about $70 billion worth of business. So this is a really essential sort of core technology to the television industry. There's a new version of the watermarks. It's essentially an upgrade to the encoders that we are rolling out across the industry now. And the new version of the watermarks are detectable through the microphones across the living room on smartphones and tablets. And they're very robust. So at low and high volumes in various environments, the watermarks are robust to high levels of compression, down to about 32 kbits per second, so web levels of compression. If you're watching on your Roku or Apple TV box, those watermarks will all flow through. The watermarks are also, they're persistent to time-shifted viewing. So I record on my DVR from the Edge app, and I can watch it 3 days later, and everything remains synced when I launch that app on my iPad. And the same is true for on demand. So I know Weather Channel has all these shows on Comcast On Demand in my neighborhood. I watch it on demand, and those we're still able to achieve sync in that way. So let me. I'm going to show another app that we developed, or that we enabled, and I'm really happy to say that. Let me talk very briefly about the Media Sync platform. What we've created is there's three components to sort of the product toolkit here. There's an application framework, a reference design, and you'll recognize a lot of similarities here, right? So it is templated. Now it is customizable, and it can be customized to greater or lesser degrees. There's a reference design and the client application. That's one of the core piece of the product platform. The other is the CMS, the content management system that John mentioned. And we didn't anticipate this, but that's where really a lot of the heavy lifting and investment has been made on our side to make it easy for content owners and producers. This can't take a dedicated producer to commit their full-time 40 hours or 60 hours a week to maintaining this. It's a day, maybe less, right? It's pretty easy to use, and that was critical to the success of this. There's a third piece, and that's behind the scenes, of course, we're capturing every meaningful user-generated event or interactive, click, video playback, poll, quiz, whatever that content is, we're capturing that. There's an analytics engine and a reporting toolkit. So those are the three pieces of the Media Sync solution that we make available to our clients. So here's a Grey's Anatomy app. Let me just talk a little bit. There's sort of two core use cases here. So now this gets to some of the creative, right? It's not just the app, the value to the consumer is not just in the live sync mode, right? There's value outside of that. So the real magic is in sync, and I'll talk some more about that. But there's an episode guide here you see on the left. This is repurposing a lot of content that, of course, ABC already had available. And you could argue, whether it's valuable to repurpose that. I think it is. I think presenting it in the context of an app, in the context of the show, adds tremendous value to fans. I've talked to a lot of fans of Grey's Anatomy, and they'll never go to abc.com/Grey's Anatomy, but they'll launch the app, and they're finding content here for the first time that's been available for a long time. So it's bios and episode guides. There's also, John showed, I think, a video and photo gallery. We make those available here on the right-hand side of the screen. I just clicked, I forget if it was, here's a video gallery. Again, this is repurposing a lot of content that ABC already had available. So that's all part of the core app, and that's important because when the user downloads this app, they're probably not watching the show, but they're probably going to launch it, and they're going to want to know, hey, what do I got here? And you could generate a lot of negative reviews very quickly if you don't deliver a positive first experience here.
And imagine this too, that what's important about this is outside of the sync environment. So when you want to go back and watch videos, you don't necessarily want to have on your iPad a video running while the TV is on, right? So this is sort of pre or post, and it's an important part because it's part of the choreography, but it's not inside the sync. So it's a really, it's a dimensional side of it. Yeah.
Absolutely. So here's what I'm going to do now. I'm actually going to imagine that's your 60-inch display across the living room. I'm going to play back a video clip from a couple of weeks ago. I captured this over the air from Grey's Anatomy episode, Don't Tell ABC I'm Doing This. And I'm going to play back, just for the watermarks, I'm going to hit the sync button. And it takes, I think it was having a little bit harder picking up the audio track off the monitors here. Generally takes 5 to 10 seconds to capture the watermarks. There it is. It just synced, right? Once it's synced, it will, it's accurate. In other words, John was able to program content, those content modules, with, and trigger those with 1 second accuracy. So you can say, okay, at 22 minutes and 39 seconds, I want this photo thing to display and from the edge. Let me just, what's happening here is the The clip I took from the show is about 40 minutes in. It's loading, it's pulling over the local wireless network, all the content. So it's going to take a minute to load. But here's the scene I was watching. The music that was playing in the background was, what is it, Vanderlyle's Crybaby Geeks. So music plays an important role in Grey's Anatomy. So the producers and the showrunner said, hey, we want to feature music in the app. And when that plays in the background of the show, let's put that front and center. You'll also see, of course, the Lexus. So the ABC ad sales team sold this campaign. We did not, and that's really important as well. I'll talk a little bit more about that in a second. I'm going to go back to the beginning just to, again, talk a little bit about this user experience that we've developed. It's really, this is a top-down feed, like Facebook, like Twitter. John mentioned content modules. There are different types of content modules. We have about 8 or 10, depending on how you define or create those. That was the welcome module. This tells me the band that played in the first one. Here's a bit of trivia that's related to that first important scene. There's another one sponsored by Lexus. So there's a lot of content modules. They can be, bios, director's commentary, trivia, can take a lot of different forms. This is a social media module. And I guess to the value proposition to the consumer here, again, I see it in two sort of camps. One is social media based, pure and simple, right? And you'll recognize those features when they come up readily. And then there's content. And I think you have to do both. It's not enough to just check in. It's not enough to share. I think real fans of shows, this is about content is still king, fundamentally, I believe, and it's important to embrace that. But here, if I comment on this, I'm just going to say, no way, I don't even know what this one is. So that's now live. That just went out to the fan base. If anybody else was out there watching, they would see that comment. Here's a check-in. So I just checked into a virtual environment, Derek's operating room, Dr. McDreamy, I believe. Maybe McSteamy, somebody might correct me. And here's a badge. I unlock the badge. I can push that to my Facebook feed or Twitter, and I can customize that. We enable the producers to create polls and quizzes, right? These quizzes can unlock bonus materials. There's a nice reward option there. So this is important. So now you saw Lexus sponsored content modules before. This one is purely Lexus, right? There's no show content here, and that's because when the ad break hits, it's a wholly Lexus branded experience that takes over that second screen. They bought run of app sponsorship, so they get to own that for those 2 minutes.
I love it, run of app, right?
And this is a pretty rich experience. I mean, I can go to full screen and play back that video. It's probably still downloading, but you get the picture. I can really deliver a pretty, compelling call to action. And in this case, I just hit the banner to bring up a browser window. This is basically a Safari browser, right, from the WebKit within the iPad or iOS development environment. We didn't have anything to do with this creative at all. This is not a template. This is wide open. This is up to the agency or advertiser, giving them complete creative freedom. In this case, there's a dealer locator, whatever that call to action might be. And I'm going to start wrapping up here pretty quick. I just want to show the different types of content modules, and you'll start to see some repetition here. We can share to Facebook and Twitter in various ways. Here's a poll, and there's different ways the polls are presented. In this case, just buttons. That could be multiple. You could have 3, 4, 5, or more. And then you see the poll results. And the timing of those results is, again, it's up to the producer and show creators. It could come in the next minute, or it could be a predictive poll. If it's a reality show and you want to say who's going to get voted off tonight, you could save that for the very end. So one of the things that I think is interesting from a creative point of view is that this is like programming, from a content perspective. You got to think about that user experience. And Channing, I think your point was really important, that these are experiences over time. This is not a static site. It's not about linking. It's not a hub and spoke model. It's about presenting content, whether it's social media, show-related content, or branded content, in context, in the moment. And I think there's tremendous value in delivering.
And that's one of the arguments to say that this is actually a production, and that it should be thought of in the development phase of the show, so that we get producers who are conscious of content to choreograph this in such a way that the right content shows up on this screen corollary to what's on the TV screen. And that's a programming mind. That's a production mind. And it's really, if we do this after the fact, it's always, you can do it, and it's effective, but it seems to be, if we can get ahead of the curve and do it at the development side, it just seems from a content piece, that seems important.
I'll just finish up with two comments here. You know, I just whipped through a whole bunch of material here, and it looks like a lot. In fact, ABC and the ABC Digital producers that created this were really experimental early on, trying to create a really rich experience with a lot of content modules, and they've since sort of pulled back. And you know, for this type of show, and it would change dramatically from genre to genre and show to show. There's no formula, there's no universal formula in terms of this experience. But in this case, you know, a new content module every couple of minutes feels like a good pace. We see users and viewers in an ad break, they'll go back. So this is all scrollable. It's flowing in top down, but I can always sort of override. As a user, I have the option to kind of override and go back. Oh, here's one more module. This is a Facebook module. Let me wrap up on this. This is kind of interesting. The social media manager for ABC Digital, they curate this Facebook fan page, among others. Grey's Anatomy has about 13 million fans to their fan page, so a super active fan base. And what we're able to do in the content management system, we've got a Facebook module, and it allows them to identify a threaded discussion. In this case, they seeded the discussion before the show with this particular comment, right? Alex has quite an ambitious yada yada. And then the producer is able to identify which thread to bring into this experience. So I think that's pretty cool, right? We're kind of utilizing existing platforms, and this is obviously all through Facebook Connect. You know, Twitter can be integrated in similar ways, right? People are commenting and curating their shows and movies in Twitter, and you can imagine that in a synced environment as well.
Very cool. Very
So let me wrap up on that point.
Good. Any questions? Thought? Nick, quick.
No, but there's no reason the core technology wouldn't work, or this particular platform. Yes, that's it. I will say that we're you know, Nielsen holds a unique position in the industry, and we're going and bringing this to our content owner clients first and foremost. So those are our primary sort of customers for this particular platform.
Quick thoughts over here?
Great question. So there's really two competing technologies in terms of content ID, right, or ACR. And Nielsen has deep technology and IP in both fingerprint and watermark domains. In fact, we use fingerprints quite a bit as part of the core Nielsen measurement system. I like watermarks for a number of reasons. There's greater efficiency to it, right? When the codes that are embedded in the programming in the audio track, they identify a source path. So there are 3 slots. One will hold ABC, right, the content owner. A second slot reserved for a distributor. So Grey's Anatomy might go into syndication on TNT. Well, we can identify that as well. And then there's a third slot that identifies a local affiliate, KABC, KCBS, right? That's really important, especially when it comes to monetizing and targeting and doing things that the business needs to do here. The second bit of key information in the watermark is a time date stamp, accurate to the second. So that's important. A couple of advantages there. One, it can be resolved on the mobile device. There's no network, there's no return trip to the network required, the server required to resolve content ID. So with signature-based systems, and there's some good ones out there, and Intu has done a phenomenal job in delivering low latency signature-based solution, but it requires a network round trip. It also requires a fair bit of CPU cycle time on device. You capture the signal, the sample, send it up over the network, identify the program, and then send the result back down over the network to the device. The device does its thing. It takes cycle time. It takes a pretty robust and expensive back end to pull all that and index everything on the fly in real time. And it's fundamentally more efficient to do watermarks. Now, the one thing that Nielsen brings that I think is pretty unique in this space is we're already watermarking every show in North America and many, many other markets. So in a sense, that piece of the technology comes for free to the industry.
Okay, I'm going to hold off on questions because I want to make sure we get the other presentations in, and then we can come back. I'm sorry for changing my mind. Okay, so Dewey Reed has a different technology that he uses, a different content approach, a similar experience. Dewey?
Yeah, we decided to go a very different route here. I mean, I really wanted to create a platform that the showrunners and the producers and writers could really use and to augment their material. So instead of kind of a templatized form, what we really did is we just created this back-end platform that's very simple. It works off of server time, and it actually works off the logs from the network. So we're really trying to drive people towards broadcast television and to get them to sit down. So let me start the app up.
Can we shift to Dewey?
So, I mean, basically, I'm going to show you the app live here. I have red and green and yellow ones. These are my testing places where I test the app. But when you turn the app on, it says, wait a minute here. Okay, so this is I'm going to go to the seasons. This is the new one that's coming up. And you'll see at the bottom that we have a countdown clock. So that's actually 1 day, 6 hours, 39 minutes, and 12 seconds until that next app starts. And this kind of creates a little bit of anticipation on the audience part. And it's really kind of one of the little thrills that I get is when that thing hits 0 and that show hits the air and it all turns on and the app starts activating itself. It's kind of fun. Obviously, we have pre-show things so you can see what this episode that's coming up. We have, in the app, we also have, obviously, the cast and crew stuff. We put in a bunch of social networking things. This one is kind of creepy, but this shows the closest people that are watching the show to you. So, and you can actually, put in messages to your fans there if you'd like. We also do Twitter, signing into Twitter and seeing the Twitter feed, and Facebook, so we can see that too. I'm just going to keep moving through because it seems like the bandwidth is slower up here than it is actually in the audience, which is funny. I'm going to go backwards in time a little bit because what we do is we log each episode, so then after the show has already aired on broadcast and you go to watch it on Hulu or you go to watch it online or at fox.com or wherever you're going to watch it, you can also play along with it at the same time. And what we ended up doing is we put a sync button at the top bottom. You start the show online and you hit the sync button. So this is what happens when the show actually starts, is you get a series of modules, and you can see the next one's going to come down in 54 seconds, the next one in 2 minutes, and so you see the kind of the whole schedule of what's going to be coming your way. Now within each one of these modules, there's also sub-modules. So like in the forensic lab area, we're delivering the forensic evidence all the way through the show. I'm just going to move forward through time, which I really wish I could do this in my real life, but because some of these shows, some of the shows aren't all that great, but not Bones. Bones is great, but so we obviously have polls like everybody else does, and this is how we do the polls, and we actually deliver these polls through time throughout the show. We do a jukebox, so we actually deliver the music that's in the show, and you can buy it through the iTunes store. Here's the forensic lab. This one had about 7 pieces of forensic evidence in it, and each one of these things opens up, and you can obviously follow the forensic evidence that's going on in the show.
And in this case, they replayed video of the scene that was just there with some
Absolutely.
captions and things.
Yeah, well, so one of the things that the network did, which is really great, is that they're giving us all the stuff that's on the screens, the forensic evidence that they're showing in the show. We get all that stuff, and then we put it into the app ahead of time, which is kind of fun for the audience because then they can go look at those really decaying bodies and all the things that are on Bones. And Bones is an interesting show because it's kind of like half of it's about really creepy forensics and the other half is about these love stories. So we kind of go back and forth between polls between pictures of dead bodies and polls about lovers, which is kind of an interesting thing. I mean, like this one right here that just happened, this happened last week, is the 2 main characters finally went to bed together. Well, what did they do in bed? Well, they didn't show it in the show so that the audience is all saying what they did, and actually they're way off on percentages, but I won't go there. One of the interesting things too that we found out about this is, the sync of the show. We can get very accurate with the sync because we've got the logs and we know exactly what's going to happen on the show at when. Now, do you give that information right when that's happening? Do you wait till afterwards? Do you do a spoiler ahead of time to make them feel like they're getting something in advance? It's a really interesting kind of, as Channing puts it, choreography right now. And this is why I really wanted the platform to kind of be an open platform for producers and writers and the people that are making the show, because I think, again, too, I want to go back to another thing that happened, which was really interesting. When I went to the digital groups in the networks, they all went, oh, okay, that's cool, you know, that'll be fun. When they took that to the show people got pretty excited about it, because there's a nice big screen that they could use. You know, it's not this little tiny screen.
Right.
So I really can see over time that, you know, when we start to get it, when their shows are being designed with these apps, this is going to get really a lot of fun. We also have a diary that happens in here. So every week, this Dr. Sweets writes this diary. So it's been really great, interesting sort of experience that we've had. The first couple of episodes that we did were just nerve-wracking as hell, because, you know, we're doing this in time. And, you know, I wasn't used to looking at an iPad while I'm watching a show, and I found it made me very scatological, and it made me kind of crazy when I was watching it. So I was trying to really figure out, how do we tone it down? How do we deliver the things during the break? So we have so much to learn here. It's just insane. I mean, it's really crazy. I mean, I was talking to the client Hardy, who's sitting over here, and we were saying today, is this an appropriate thing for a drama? It's certainly an appropriate thing for a live show, where it doesn't matter where you look away for a couple of minutes and stuff. But when you have a scripted show that's that tight, I mean, most people want to sit back and watch that, you know. That's another reason we gave it, so you could go back through the material after the show if you wanted to, and also going on to VOD. But I think, you know, I want to move on so she can get her stuff out. But it's just really a lot of fun to do these things. Oh, I wanted to talk about, you know, you said it took you about a day to provision the thing. That's, once we get all the material from the studios, it takes us about a day to provision. And it's very fast.
Which is remarkable. That's just wonderful.
Well, and our studios keep throwing new things at us. So it's like this week, I mean, one week they threw a whole new type of poll at us. The next week they said do a suspect tracker. And, you know, so I'm trying to accommodate the studios as much as possible, because I really want this to be, you know, seen as a creative platform and not just, just a templatized form. So.
Cool. We'll save questions. Think about questions about Dewey's app. Again, we're at the beginning of this. This is a renaissance, in my opinion, about a whole new platform to program against. Now we're going to see something completely different, which is cool. Lisa's going to show us an app that was developed against a television show in Germany. I think it's Galileo. Yes. Yes, and take it over.
So this is Victoria, my Vanna White of augmented reality. She will be helping me with a lot of demos here today. So, is everyone familiar with the concept of augmented reality? Have heard of it in the past? Show of hands. Oh, wow. Wow. Okay.
This is a tuned-in audience.
Well, what we're going to show you might be different in terms of what you imagine augmented reality to be. And we're going to get into how augmented reality is moving in terms of the television side. So if you play the iPad video. So I'll show you a little quick video here on the iPad if we get it coordinated on 2.
Replug?
That's all I always say when it comes to demos and videos.
Live demos.
Isn't that Tom Cruise?
There.
The syncing? Yeah. There we go. So Matayo, our company, is really based on augmented reality technology. And where we're using the technology today is connecting the physical world with the digital. So here you will see shortly an example of a use case, what we're doing in everyday consumer experience. I'm sure you probably have problems setting up your cable setup box or some things of that sort where it's really complicated. We're utilizing the technology, especially on tablets, where you can point at physical objects, be able to track real time and overlay information so you know exactly what you need to do. And this is an example of augmented reality in kind of a consumer application where if you're deciding on, you know, which rims of the cars you're trying to buy, You could take an instant tracking of the wheel and be able to rotate through different types of car rims. And this is what we're doing on interactive TV that's a little bit different from what you've seen in terms of syncing. We're actually using the visual markers on television screen as a tracking device to render 3D contents off of the TV. So if there's a coupon or offer that can jump off the TV screen. We've also worked with furniture companies where AR is used for different applications to help you visualize what the patio would look like, or energy bulbs when you're trying to communicate how that works. Physical watches, you never have to go to a store again. You'll be able to overlay these kind of contents on you. And my favorite part is being able to play Angry Birds, but with real humans in a real world setting.
I love this.
So that target didn't go well, but you can see here, shooting at the target. So to show you an example of a real use case in augmented reality, what we've done is we worked with a company that ran a TV ad, and this is the ad itself. Basically what we're doing is tracking the physical ad itself, and we're putting a TV on a print advertisement. So as you can see here, oh, actually, can we hold on the video really quick? Still the iPad, okay. But if you look at the left-hand side and the right-hand side, what you can see here is we're doing a automatic sync, tracking the print ad itself and putting video content on the print ad. Let's pause a little bit, but as you can see, the video is a movie texture on top of the ad, so if you have advertisement, this is a way to really make it interactive and engaging. So now we're going to do a little bit experiment. If we can play the video from the beginning, Victoria is going to talk about the Galileo show, because it's in German, so Victoria knows a little bit of German, but to show you what we're doing with Galileo.
Do you need to restart the video?
Please, that would be great.
Okay.
And if we could have it on there too, so I don't have to turn around.
Can we
Okay,
relaunch
no,
the video from the beginning?
So basically, Galileo is a kind of a trivia show. It comes on once a week in German-speaking countries, Austria and Germany. I'm from Austria, so I watched it pretty much every week. And so the next day it would be fun to talk to people about what you learned on the show. Usually there's about 3 topics that are presented, anything from ice cream to bacon to love to anything, universe. And then it would, just explain to you certain facts and trivias about
Here
it.
it goes. Starting from the
And in this episode that we worked with, this is the ice cream. So this first trivia question asks, where is the popsicle from? How did that get invented? It has a little show. The show's usually an hour long with commercials. And here it goes through basic examples how it could be invented. In this case, one option could be that a drill, they used a drill, or this guy is experimenting with drills and decided to drill ice. So I guess that's one option how popsicles could be invented. And it just shows a little clip of what could have happened. So here it says the German driller, experimenter person. Then the next option would be a dentist who uses it as a numbing agent. Maybe that's how the popsicle got invented. It's a little bit gruesome, so. And the third option would be a frozen lemonade with a spoon in it. Would be the third option. So in the end, they chose these little clips of how could the popsicle have been invented. And what happens is that then they ask the people on the street what they think, and then you've got your options, the multiple choice, and you get to choose. And with, hurry up, uh-oh. So people on the street have to choose how it got invented. And then you as a viewer are also able to look at that with your iPad or your iPhone or whatever, and then live choose exactly what you think it would be. In this case, I would choose the first one, A. Oh, you were wrong. So if you get it right or get it wrong, you can see how many % of the people that have also done this have either gotten it right or wrong.
So I'm sorry, the connection cord is a little bit, so I'm getting the full screen, but in a real world experience, if you're sitting on the couch, you could basically point your iPad to the TV screen. It would do a visual tracking of the marker as it is on the TV screen, call the data from the server, then you get the option to choose right away. I think what's different from some of the things that you've seen in terms of syncing is that it really creates an interactive experience. You're not having a separate application and you're looking at the content, but you can really engage with the show. Just imagine, National Geographic doing a story on dinosaurs. You point your iPad to the TV screen, it will recognize the TV screen, and then the 3D dinosaur walks right off the screen. You can play a game and interactions, things of that sort.
Could it be wired up that whatever you tap on your screen could show up on the TV at some point where you're coalescing all the votes, for instance?
Yeah, so a lot of this content is stored on the server. It's in the Amazon cloud. So just as we're pulling the data from the server, after, for example, when we voted, we can see 59% of the people scored wrong. That content could be fed back to the server and that way integrated into the TV show so you can have a kind of an interaction or second endings or alternative ending.
That's just wonderful. Okay, we're going to open it up for questions. We got about 10 minutes left. So feel free to has anybody seen any of these apps at home, done Grey's Anatomy? Let me see a show of hands. So about 10%. Any thoughts, any questions for these guys? Yep.
So in fact, that is built into our app, and then it's up to the user to turn it on or off. But there is a little ping to let the user know that a new content module has been delivered. But you raise a really important point, and that's really educating the consumer, the viewer, that there's something possible, or that maybe even the app exists at all. And if it does, maybe the user. So ABC did a good job. Weather Channel also promoting it. They built 30-second spots around this, promoted it across their online properties. But it's still a challenge to remind the viewer at home. It's like, hey, you downloaded this app maybe 3 weeks ago. Guess what? Your show's on. You're watching it now. Launch it and check in or engage. So there's you've hit on a really specific sort of aspect of the user experience. But I think there's some higher level issues there as well. It's just letting people know that it exists.
Yeah, and we've been doing some experiments in our 2.0 version that's coming out. We did subsonic sounds in it, so it actually vibrates the iPad. So that was one way to do it, because we were really trying not to disrupt what's going on the screen. So we've been doing a lot of experiments as far as how do we let people know. And we've been doing things with color and trying a lot of different things. But you're absolutely right. You have to let them know that there's new stuff happening.
I'm going to steal those ideas because that's really good.
As I said, we're entering the feelies, right? Okay, any other questions? Yes?
Question for Scott. There are other, right here, other companies out there in the check-in synchronized space. Is Nielsen's motivation here to provide second-by-second market feedback data, or are you offering a consumer app here?
Well, the current priority is to deliver a compelling consumer experience and an entertaining one. These are very, very early days. I mean, really exciting, I think, for everybody here. And yes, there are competitors, a lot of competition in this space, but it's really, we're not, I'll answer that more directly. The Nielsen is not using this technology, and I talk about analytics and recording user-generated events. We're not rolling that into Nielsen ratings, or it's not touching that system at all. It's still relatively small numbers of people using these apps. Long term, yes, that's definitely an interest of Nielsen's, but at present, not a priority. We really want to deliver a compelling consumer experience that's valuable to the content owners, the viewers, of course, the content owners, and advertisers. I mean, it's critical to win on those fronts before it's even conceivable to look at long-term, statistically significant data and sample sizes that are meaningful to Nielsen.
John's got a question.
I must say, after we engaged with Scott, our ratings, Nielsen ratings, went way up. I don't know if that was part of the deal or not, but they did. So,
Question here.
I was wondering, you were mentioning, especially during drama or fiction, scripted fiction, that the viewer actually uses probably the commercial break to use the interactive features or the additional content. Have you had any experience or any feedback from the advertisers? Because we've seen this in the UK, for example, that the advertisers say, well, you're not watching my ads anymore. We don't want the interactivity unless it's a sponsored ad, for example.
You know, again, the numbers are so low as far as who's adopted these apps that, you know, we're not running into that problem, but I hope we do.
Well, and I hope we actually start to learn how to sync apps, as Second Screen is doing. The idea of syncing advertising into this. But that's going to change the ad model. It may be that apps work best against sponsored shows where there's one advertiser who sponsors the entire arc of the show, which you've seen. Ford has done that in certain specials and whatnot. So that this may be one of those opportunities to redefine an ad model.
Yeah, also sponsored modules like behind the scenes is sponsored by.
Right.
You know.
But during the ad breaks, I experienced both of these apps, pretty much watched all the shows with both apps. And at first I got kind of pissed off that my ads weren't synced. And I went to the Lexus ad while the Jeep ad was on air, right? And you go, but that was my own stuff. And then I got into the Alexa stuff, and they were actually doing very interesting stuff, and it kept me in the app. So there is a problem because you're not watching the commercials, but they never really knew if you were watching the commercials anyway, right? So there's a lot of different.
So for us, when we do interactive television, for Galileo use case, when we first launched the show, we had about 40,000 unique users that participated in the quiz. I'm sorry it didn't work, but in Germany, it was a huge phenomenon. People were actually waiting for the show to happen, getting their iPads and iPhones ready to watch this. Galileo improved their ratings by 14%. So this is a way where if you're doing something interactive with the television, you could have a sponsor advertiser that's paying for that and having, just some kind of, what you saw with the overlay. It could be a Lexus overlay with some logos. And because they're participating in that, it's kind of a subtle message that sponsored by Lexus, and it's 40,000 unique users that are participating.
I'm just trying to play a little devil's advocate because in interactivity, it's probably 99.5% of the people that are not using the interactivity. So those are the ones being monetized through the advertising. That's why I'm telling that the advertisers that are not involved in the interactive format will probably say, I don't want any disturbance of my ad break.
They'll come over. We'll win them over. Questions? We got 3, 4, 5 minutes left. Any other questions? What hasn't worked? Guys, what hasn't worked in these apps? Well, you mentioned something at the beginning, too much content.
yeah, definitely, and that was the case for Grays. Same thing for us. And one of the lessons we learned is at least for this type of syncing experience, less is more. Certainly, we wouldn't use video during the show. We might use some bonus video as the last module, or you could use it as an unlock, I think. But you definitely don't want to show video, I think, midstream.
Right.
I think that creating these experiences, it's more art than science, and you have to really approach that second screen experience with a delicate touch. And the content that you deliver, or the social experience, has to really dovetail quite closely. Really, I mean, we really talk about the primary screen as the primary, and it's really important that the second screen experience be curated in concert with that. So there were times where, okay, so here was an episode that was directed by one of the actors on Grey's Anatomy, and it kind of went too meta, right? So it was the actor, right, as director of the episode, commenting on why he set up certain shots in that particular episode. And it's like, for a fan of a drama like Grey's Anatomy, it's like, keep me in the show. All I care about is story. I don't care about actors. I care about characters. And in this case, it was a really, valiant experiment, but it was one that didn't really work. Right. It was too abstract, and it didn't add to the primary viewing experience. It was an interesting idea, but it wasn't right in that context. It might be really right for Peter Lik to talk about that in the context of sort of nonfiction or reality programming perhaps, but not here.
So it's so interesting. Every genre, every show is going to be different, and it's going to have that delicacy that we have to do. 1 minute left. Any other thoughts?
I have a question.
Oh, yeah, back here. Sorry. One
Hi.
minute.
I'm wondering if anybody's investing in doing focus groups and user testing on this stuff. A lot of it I see is people, you kind of are imagining what users might want right now and sort of maybe seeing feedback based on the data of how they're interacting. But is there anybody who's spending the money to really run lots of different ideas past people and see what works?
I can answer for Scripps. As we go into this, we've already pulled together a panel of people. We're going to run prototypes against them to see what they expect and what they might want, and then do an app and then run it post and see what. This is completely iterative. We're trying to figure out what will work or what won't work prior to actually getting into the app.
I know Discovery has done a lot of research in this field. I know ABC has a big program running through their ad lab in Austin now. Now that'll all be proprietary and internal data for those content owners. But CTAM is conducting a study as we speak. There are a series of focus groups in Las Vegas at this TV City facility, and that will be data that is published by CTAM, I believe next month, just in advance of and CTAM is the Cable Television Association of Marketers. So that will be something that will be more publicly available.
So let's give it up for these guys. Thanks so much.